Hey man, let's be real. When was the last time you saw a truly feminine woman? Not just a woman who wears makeup, puts on a dress, or posts a picture with a fake soft smile, but a woman who embodies actual femininity. A woman who moves with grace, nurtures with warmth, and finds strength in gentleness instead of hostility. It feels rare, almost extinct, doesn't it? That's because modern society has done everything it can to erase femininity, to replace it with hardness, competition, and ego. And now what we're left with is a world where feminine women, real feminine women, barely exist anymore. Feminine energy is supposed to complement masculinity. It's supposed to be about softness, intuition, nurturing, vulnerability, and emotional depth. But when women are constantly told to be strong, independent, and never need a man, they start adopting masculine traits out of survival or ego, and slowly lose touch with what makes them feminine. The modern woman has been taught that femininity is weakness, that leaning into softness makes her powerless, and so she resists it. She wears strength like armor, but it's not natural. It's a mask, and deep down she's tired, but society won't allow her to rest into her true feminine self anymore. You see it everywhere. Women competing with men, trying to outdo them, trying to prove they can dominate the same spaces, instead of cultivating their own. They measure themselves by careers, money, and status, not by connection, family, or inner peace. And while there's nothing wrong with ambition, the problem arises when ambition replaces femininity, because a woman who lives entirely in her masculine energy becomes hardened, restless, and unfulfilled. She may win in her career, she may collect material success, but when it comes to relationships, she struggles, because men don't want another competitor at home. Men crave the balance of femininity, not a mirror image of themselves. The tragedy is that many women don't even realize they've been programmed. They think rejecting femininity makes them strong, but in reality, it robs them of what makes them truly powerful. Feminine power is not about controlling through force, but about influence, intuition, and softness. A feminine woman doesn't have to demand respect. It's drawn to her naturally because she inspires peace and warmth. She doesn't have to manipulate her presence. Alone calms a man's storm. But now, you barely see that. Instead, you see women addicted to chaos, drama, attention, and proving themselves. That's not femininity, that's insecurity dressed in rebellion. And here's the real dark truth. Because women have abandoned femininity, men are abandoning relationships. Men don't want to fight battles at work, only to come home and fight more battles with the person who's supposed to bring them peace. Men don't want to constantly defend, prove, or argue with women who mistake confrontation for strength, and so men are walking away. Not because they hate women, but because the thing they once looked for in women, femininity, softness, nurture, doesn't exist in the way it used to. The world has hardened women, and in turn, it has hardened men. And in this cycle, genuine feminine women have become the rarest treasure of all. Think about this. When men of the past described their ideal woman, they didn't talk about her career title, her income, or her ability to argue with them into exhaustion. They spoke about her warmth, her kindness, the way she made a house feel like a home, the way her presence softened even the harshest of days. Femininity wasn't about subservience, it was about balance. Masculinity builds the walls, but femininity makes the space inside worth living in. Masculinity leads, but femininity nurtures that leadership into something that lasts. That was once common, that was once valued, but now it's dismissed as old-fashioned, and with that dismissal, men and women have both lost something irreplaceable. Modern women confuse independence with masculinity. They confuse loudness with strength. They confuse being difficult with being valuable. But what they don't see is that this constant fight to outdo men actually makes them less attractive to the very men they want. You can't outman a man and expect him to desire you for it. A woman who thinks she's strong because she competes with men is actually weaker because her strength is reactive, not authentic. Real feminine strength isn't about competing with men, it's about complementing men. And until women understand this difference, they'll keep wondering why men feel no desire to commit to them. What's worse is how this lack of femininity shows up in relationships. A feminine woman used to take pride in creating peace, in nurturing emotional closeness, in bringing out the best in her man. But now relationships with modern women are filled with testing, nagging, constant dissatisfaction, and endless drama. She doesn't create peace, she creates problems. She doesn't soothe her man, she provokes him. She doesn't inspire him to give more. She demands more while giving less. And when men step back and evaluate what they're getting, the math no longer adds up. Why give everything for a woman who no longer brings the essence of femininity to the table? Social media has amplified this problem. Women now equate femininity with external aesthetics, dressing in revealing clothes, doing makeup tutorials, posting seductive selfies, but that's not femininity, that's marketing. True femininity can't be shown through a filter or measured by likes. It's something you feel in a woman's presence. It's in her softness, her gentleness, her ability to trust and allow herself to be vulnerable with a man she respects. But social media tells her to perform instead of embody. And so, women grow more skilled at appearances while losing touch with the actual depth of being feminine. It's all surface, no substance, and men can feel the difference. And let's be clear, femininity is not about weakness, and it never was. A truly feminine woman is powerful in a way most men can't even describe. She has influence without force. She commands respect without shouting. She inspires love without demanding it. When she walks into a room, the energy changes, not because she's loud or dominant, but because she radiates warmth and softness that people are drawn to. That's real feminine power. But society has convinced women to throw away that power and trade it for aggression, coldness, and hardness. And in doing so, women didn't gain strength, they lost the very thing that once made them irreplaceable. The disappearance of femininity didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, decade by decade. Culture whispered to women that being nurturing meant being oppressed, that being supportive meant being weak, and that being vulnerable meant being foolish. And little by little, women began rejecting the very traits that once made them the cornerstone of families and communities. They traded gentleness for hardness, humility for pride, and emotional depth for shallow performance. The tragedy is that many women thought they were liberating themselves, but what they truly did was sever themselves from the natural energy that made them magnetic in the first place. Now, what we see is not freedom, but frustration. Look closely at how modern relationships play out. Men feel drained, constantly walking on eggshells, never sure what version of her they'll get that day. Instead of being inspired, they feel tested. Instead of being respected, they feel criticized. And instead of being supported, they feel competed with. This is not partnership, it's rivalry disguised as love. A man enters the relationship looking for peace, for a woman who can balance his masculine drive with feminine nurture, but instead, he gets chaos, and chaos doesn't build, it destroys. The more women lose touch with femininity, the more men lose motivation to invest, because why give your best when what you receive in return is stress, and men are noticing. That's why more men are walking away from marriage, from commitment, even from dating altogether. It's not that men have lost interest in women, it's that they've lost interest in the version of women that society now produces. When femininity disappears, relationships lose their magic. Without femininity, there's no softness, no tenderness, no emotional sanctuary. It becomes a transaction, his resources for her presence, his attention for her approval. And men don't want to live in transactions. They want connection, inspiration, legacy. When femininity is gone, what's left isn't love. It's an arrangement, and arrangements collapse the second one. Person stops benefiting. Here's the painful irony. Women crave masculine men, but they themselves have abandoned the very femininity that attracts masculine men. A man grounded in his masculinity does not desire a combative partner. He desires a feminine complement. But modern women, raised to reject femininity, end up embodying masculinity instead. And what happens when two masculine energies clash? Competition, tension, and conflict. That's why so many relationships feel like constant battles now. Two people are playing the same role, and the harmony is lost. Feminine women once knew how to soften that energy, how to surrender control, not out of weakness but out of trust. But that wisdom has been discarded, and in its place stands defiance. For the few feminine women who still exist, life is different. They don't struggle to attract men. They don't have to beg for commitment. They don't get discarded the way modern women do. Why? Because femininity is rare, and rarity breeds value. Men crave peace in a world full of pressure, and the woman who provides it becomes unforgettable. She doesn't need to manipulate, because her energy alone is a gift. But because these women are so rare, men often give up looking for them. They assume all women are the same, and in a way they're right, because society is producing copies instead of originals. And each copy is further removed from the feminine essence that once made women priceless. The loss of femininity doesn't just affect individual relationships, It's reshaping society itself. Families are weaker than ever before. Children grow up in homes where peace is scarce and arguments are constant. Young boys see mothers hardened, defensive, and combative, and they subconsciously learn that softness in women is a myth. Young girls grow up watching their mothers reject femininity and embrace masculine aggression, and they inherit the same patterns. Generation after generation, the cycle repeats, and what gets lost along the way is the understanding that feminine energy is not only valuable, it's essential. It is the counterweight to masculinity that keeps human connection balanced. Without it, chaos becomes the default setting of households, communities, and culture at large. This is why men increasingly describe modern women as exhausting. It's not about looks, it's not about careers, it's about energy. A man who works all day to build, provide, and protect doesn't want to come home to another battle. He doesn't want to fight the person who's supposed to be on his team. He doesn't want to negotiate every little thing, defend every choice, or justify his very existence. He wants to rest into her femininity, to feel her presence, calm him down, not stir him up. But when modern women show up hardened and masculine, there's no rest, there's only resistance, and resistance makes love impossible. Femininity was once seen as a divine gift, something sacred. Ancient cultures understood this. They revered women not for their ability to mimic men, but for their unique ability to soften life's edges, to bring grace to chaos, to heal wounds that logic couldn't. A man could win wars, but it was feminine energy that healed him when he came back from the battlefield. Now that gift is dismissed. Women don't see the value in nurturing anymore. They see it as submission. They don't see the power in emotional support anymore. They see it as weakness, and the result is a society where men feel unsupported and women feel perpetually unfulfilled, chasing strength in all the wrong ways. Because here's the truth, a woman can't outman a man. She can try, she can posture, she can pretend, but in the end, her natural power doesn't come from being more masculine, it comes from being more feminine, and men know this instinctively. That's why even if they sleep with hardened women, they rarely stay with them. They don't marry them. They don't build empires with them. Because without femininity, there's no balance. A feminine woman makes a man want to give more, to protect more, to build more. She makes him feel like his masculinity has a purpose. Without that, he feels alone, even in her presence, and loneliness in a relationship is far worse than loneliness outside of it. The saddest part is that women themselves are paying the highest price for abandoning femininity. They think they're empowered, but why are depression, anxiety, and loneliness higher among women than ever before? Why are they more dissatisfied with relationships, despite having more freedom and choice than women in history? It's because they've rejected their natural design. Feminine women find fulfillment, not in endless competition, but in connection. Not in fighting men, but in inspiring them. Not in hardness, but in softness. And until women realize that rejecting femininity robs them of peace, they'll keep running in circles, winning external battles while losing the internal war. Men have quietly adjusted to this reality. Decades ago, a man would tolerate the chaos, sacrifice his peace, and endure a hardened woman simply because family and stability were worth it. But today, men are realizing they don't need to. They see the risks: divorce courts, false accusations, manipulation, and they ask themselves, what am I actually getting in return? If she doesn't bring peace, doesn't bring softness, doesn't bring feminine energy, then the deal is broken. Why would a man work endlessly, provide, protect, and sacrifice only to come home to arguments, coldness, and disrespect? This is why men are leaving relationships in record numbers. They're realizing that without femininity, there's nothing left worth staying for. And let's not confuse femininity with appearance. A woman can look feminine on the outside, wearing dresses, painting her nails, posting glamorous selfies, but still carry a masculine energy that drains a man. Femininity is not skin deep, it's soul deep. It shows in the way she listens without needing to dominate. It shows in the way she creates comfort without demanding control. It shows in the way she trusts his leadership instead of resenting it. That's true femininity, and it has nothing to do with filters or clothes. But because women now focus on appearances over essence, men are constantly disappointed. They think they're getting femininity, but what they get instead is a surface-level performance backed by masculine energy that suffocates them. The erosion of femininity also reshaped loyalty. Feminine women used to see devotion as sacred. Their loyalty wasn't transactional. It wasn't about what they were getting in the moment. It was about building a life, building legacy, building something that lasted. But now, loyalty is conditional. The moment a woman feels bored, dissatisfied, or unfulfilled, she starts searching for the next thrill. Why? Because masculine women live in competition, not connection. Their loyalty shifts to whatever feeds their ego, not to the man who built stability. And so men who once believed in lifelong commitment now hesitate, because they know that in the absence of true femininity, loyalty is always temporary. This is why femininity is not just desirable, it's necessary. It's the glue that holds relationships together, the balance that prevents love from turning into war. Masculinity is structure, but femininity is life within that structure. Masculinity protects, but femininity nurtures what's being protected. Masculinity drives forward, but femininity makes the journey meaningful. Without it, relationships become hollow, joyless, transactional arrangements, and men who once gave everything are starting to withhold, starting to detach, starting to build lives without women altogether. Because they know that in a world without femininity, chasing women only leads to exhaustion. The truth is painful but clear. Good feminine women barely exist anymore. The culture has stripped them away, programmed them into masculinity, and convinced them that rejecting their natural essence is empowerment. But men see the cost. They feel the void. They know that without femininity, love becomes empty. And so they are walking away, not from women entirely, but from the illusion that women today embody what they once did. The rare feminine woman, who still exists, is valued beyond measure because she provides something modern culture cannot replicate. Peace, and peace in a chaotic world is priceless. Until femininity returns, men will continue to withdraw, leaving women to realize too late that in rejecting their softness, they destroyed the very thing that made them irreplaceable. What makes this even more tragic is that many women deep down long to be feminine again, but they don't know how. They've been raised in a culture that shamed softness and celebrated defiance. From movies to social media, they're fed images of strong women who don't need anyone, who fight, who dominate, who lead. But when they try to live that way, they feel emptier, lonelier, and more disconnected than ever. Their natural feminine core aches to be expressed, but they're too afraid of being judged as weak, submissive, or outdated, and so they suppress the very energy that could bring them fulfillment while chasing a version of empowerment that leaves them hollow. Meanwhile, men have adjusted their expectations downward. Many no longer even dream of finding a truly feminine woman. They assume she doesn't exist, and when expectations die, desire dies with it. Why do you think so many men are content staying single, diving into their purpose, and refusing to marry? It's not because they hate women, it's because they know that feminine women are rare and masculine women are everywhere. And if the options available only drain you instead of uplift you, walking away isn't bitterness, it's survival. Modern men are not afraid of commitment, as women often claim. They're afraid of committing to a woman who brings no femininity to balance their masculinity. And here lies the contradiction modern women don't want to face. They still crave masculine men, yet they no longer give men the femininity that attracts those very men. They want a leader, but they fight leadership. They want a provider, but they resent dependence. They want protection, but they criticize the protector. They want romance, but they've killed the softness that makes romance bloom. This contradiction is why modern dating feels broken. Both men and women want the rewards of traditional dynamics, but women have abandoned the role that makes those dynamics work, and without femininity, masculinity has no reason to stay. Even worse, the culture rewards women for rejecting femininity. They gain attention, applause, and validation when they act hard, cold, and independent. But when they finally sit alone in a quiet room at night, the truth hits them. They don't feel fulfilled. They're surrounded by likes, followers, and admirers, but none of it fills the void, because no amount of external validation can replace the internal peace that femininity provides, and that peace only comes when a woman embraces her natural role, not when she tries to outdo men in being men. So yes, good feminine women barely exist anymore, not because femininity died, but because it was buried under layers of cultural programming, ego, and fear. But men are no longer blind to this. They know that a feminine woman is rare. They know that she's valuable, and they also know that if she doesn't show up, they won't waste their lives waiting. They'll build alone, they'll thrive without her, and they'll choose peace over conflict every single time. Femininity was once the heartbeat of relationships. Without it, love is just noise, and that's why men are no longer willing to settle. They want peace, not pretense. If you've ever talked to older men, the ones who grew up in a different era, They'll tell you that the women of their time were not perfect, but they were far more feminine. They valued creating homes, supporting their men, and nurturing their families. That doesn't mean they were powerless or lacked ambition. It means they understood the balance between ambition and femininity. They could be strong, but they were still soft. They could disagree, but they didn't destroy. They could lead in certain areas, but they never abandoned the grace that made them magnetic. Compare that to today, where so many women equate femininity with oppression and think rejecting it makes them free. It doesn't. It makes them empty. And this emptiness reveals itself most clearly when relationships end. A feminine woman, when she loses love, mourns deeply. She feels the weight of her loss, she reflects, and she grows. But the modern, hardened woman, she runs, she distracts herself, she pretends she doesn't care, she posts photos to look unbothered, goes out with friends, and seeks validation from strangers. Why? Because she doesn't have the feminine depth to truly process love. She has only the masculine mask that tells her to push forward, to deny, to conquer, and that's why, despite all her pretending, she still feels unsatisfied. Without femininity, even her healing process becomes fake. Men sense this difference instinctively. When a man encounters a truly feminine woman, he feels something he can't fully describe, a pull, a comfort, a sense that he's not in battle but at home. It makes him want to protect her, to provide for her, to give her the best of himself. But with modern women, he feels tension, he feels drained, he feels like every word can turn into an argument, every decision into a debate, every weakness into ammunition. That's not love, that's a power struggle. And men, tired of these struggles, are beginning to choose solitude over relationships, not because they want to be alone, but because peace has become more valuable than partnership. The irony is that feminine women hold more power over men than masculine women ever will. A man might fear a masculine woman's sharp tongue, but he'll die for a feminine woman's softness. He might tolerate drama for a while, but he'll commit for life to the woman who gives him peace. Yet modern women can't see this. They've been tricked into believing that the only way to be powerful is to dominate, to argue, to outdo. But dominance without warmth doesn't inspire, it repels. The woman who thinks she's proving her strength by rejecting femininity is in truth proving her weakness. Because real strength doesn't come from fighting masculinity, it comes from complementing it. So where does that leave men today? It leaves them cautious, guarded, and hesitant to invest. They still crave femininity, but they don't expect it anymore. They know that most women they meet will come hardened, combative, and cold, and so they protect their energy. They keep their walls high. They refuse to give everything to a woman who can't bring what's most valuable to the table. The feminine woman has become almost mythical, talked about, longed for, but rarely seen. And until women realize the cost of abandoning their natural essence, men will continue walking away. Because a relationship without femininity isn't a partnership, it's a war, and men are done fighting battles at home. The absence of femininity is also why so many men feel that relationships have become more like negotiations than love stories. Instead of finding a woman who softens his world, he finds one who itemizes her worth, like a contract. What do you provide? What do you give? What can I take? It's a checklist, not a connection. And yet the sad part is that women don't realize they're sabotaging themselves, because men may tolerate this for a while, but deep down, no man bonds with a ledger. He bonds with warmth, he bonds with care, he bonds with the femininity that makes him want to invest beyond material obligation. Without that, everything feels conditional, fragile, and temporary. We live in a time where women loudly demand equality, but they quietly still desire traditional benefits. They want men to pay, men to protect, men to lead, but they don't want to give the femininity that makes those roles worth it. And that's why men increasingly feel scammed, because relationships were never meant to be one-sided. Masculinity and femininity were designed to flow together, each offering what the other cannot. But modern women have abandoned their half of the equation. They want masculine men, yet they despise their own feminine essence. And when one side abandons its role, the whole structure collapses. This is why marriages fail, why divorces spike, why modern love feels so fragile. And here's the paradox. When women do embrace femininity, they don't become powerless, they become irresistible. A feminine woman doesn't have to chase men because men chase her. She doesn't have to demand commitment because men offer it. She doesn't have to manipulate because men naturally want to give her more. But instead of leaning into this natural advantage, women now spend their lives competing with men, trying to prove they don't need them, all while secretly craving their presence. This contradiction makes them restless. They want masculine men, but can't attract them. They want devotion, but don't inspire it. They want loyalty, but don't give it. And the missing link in all of it is femininity. Men are waking up to this reality in massive numbers. They're tired of being labeled toxic for wanting peace. They're tired of being shamed for expecting softness. They're tired of being told that their desire for femininity is outdated. The truth is, men don't owe women their energy. If women no longer bring what makes relationships worth having, and this isn't bitterness, it's clarity. Masculinity thrives when femininity balances it, but when women abandon femininity, men must find balance within themselves. And once a man learns to do that, he no longer feels compelled to sacrifice his peace just to have a woman beside him. So yes, good feminine women hardly exist anymore, and men have stopped pretending otherwise. They're not angry, they're indifferent. They're building their lives, focusing on purpose, carving out peace, and leaving women to play their games alone. The feminine woman, rare as she is, will always find men eager to cherish her, but the majority, hardened by culture, chasing false empowerment, and rejecting their natural essence, will continue to struggle. They'll blame men, they'll blame society, they'll blame anything but themselves, but deep down, they'll know the truth. By abandoning femininity, they abandon the very thing that made them invaluable. And until that returns, men will keep walking away, choosing solitude over struggle, and peace over pretense. The loss of femininity has also created a strange ripple effect. Women now feel more dissatisfied with men than ever before, yet they can't see that they're the ones who broke the balance. They complain that men aren't masculine enough, that men don't pursue like they used to, that men aren't willing to commit. But what they fail to realize is this: men are not motivated to be masculine when femininity is absent. Why would a man risk his resources, his energy, and his life force for a woman who gives him nothing but arguments and conditions in return? Masculinity thrives when it has something to protect, something to lead, something to cherish. Without femininity, men have no reason to give their best. This is why modern love feels transactional and hollow. Men are no longer inspired, they're calculating, they're weighing the risks and deciding it's simply not worth it. And while women continue to scream about independence, they secretly still crave the shelter of a strong man. But here's the irony: the more they reject femininity, the fewer strong men they attract. Masculine men don't commit to masculine women. They may entertain them, they may sleep with them, but they don't build with them. Because deep down, masculine men want peace, and peace cannot come from a woman who has killed her feminine nature. This truth is uncomfortable for modern women, but it explains why so many of them end up frustrated and alone. The saddest part is that women have been sold a lie. They were told that if they abandon femininity, they'll be stronger, freer, and happier. But look around, are women today happier than their grandmothers? No. They're more anxious, more depressed, more unfulfilled, and lonelier than ever before. They're chasing careers, attention, and endless distractions, but when the noise stops, they feel empty. Because femininity is not a limitation, it's their essence. Without it, everything else becomes meaningless. No amount of likes, promotions, or luxury vacations can fill the void left by rejecting their natural design. And until women face this, their dissatisfaction will only grow. Men, on the other hand, are finding clarity. They've stopped trying to fix women. They've stopped trying to convince them to be feminine again. Instead, they've shifted their focus inward. They're building businesses, carving out legacies, hitting the gym, and embracing solitude. They've realized that peace without a woman is better than chaos with one. And here's the shocking twist: this shift makes men even more attractive, because when a man no longer chases, no longer begs, no longer compromises his peace, he steps into his full masculine frame. And ironically, this is when women suddenly feel drawn to him, because they sense a strength they can't manipulate. But by then it's too late. So when we say good feminine women don't exist anymore, it's not an exaggeration, it's a reality shaped by culture, ego, and fear. Femininity has been replaced with hardness, with performance, with rebellion. And men, no longer fooled by appearances, have adapted. They know the difference between a woman who pretends to be feminine and one who truly is, and they will no longer settle for the pretense. They'd rather walk alone, build alone, thrive alone, than give their energy to someone who brings nothing but struggle. That's the unspoken truth of our generation. Femininity has all but vanished, and with it, the harmony that once made love something worth fighting for. When femininity fades, the very structure of love collapses. Men and women were designed to be complementary forces, not identical ones. Masculinity is direction, drive, protection, structure. Femininity is softness, intuition, nurture, flow. When those forces work together, you get harmony, families thrive, love deepens, legacies are built. But when women try to abandon femininity and mirror men, there's no polarity left. Two masculine forces under one roof will always clash, compete, and eventually destroy each other. That's why modern relationships are short-lived. They aren't rooted in balance, they're rooted in rivalry, and rivalry can never produce lasting love. The absence of feminine women also explains why men today rarely feel truly seen. A feminine woman has the gift of presence. She looks at her man and notices the details, his effort, his sacrifice, his silent struggles. She acknowledges them, and in doing so, she gives him energy to keep going. But the modern, hardened woman is too self-focused. She doesn't see his effort. She demands more. She doesn't appreciate his sacrifice. She minimizes it. She doesn't care about his silent struggles. She expects him to solve hers first. And men are realizing that without that feminine gift of presence, relationships don't recharge them, they drain them. This is why men now guard their energy like never before. They understand that giving themselves to the wrong woman is not just emotionally costly, it's spiritually destructive. A man can rebuild finances, he can rebuild his body, he can rebuild his career, but rebuilding his peace after being drained by a woman who offers no femininity, that takes years, and many men refuse to risk it anymore. They'd rather stay single than gamble their sanity on someone who doesn't even know what real femininity is. Peace is now the ultimate currency for men, and only the rare feminine woman can provide it. And here's the hidden cost women don't see. By rejecting femininity, they've made themselves interchangeable. A man doesn't see a unique, irreplaceable woman anymore. He sees a template, loud, combative, attention-seeking, self-absorbed, copy and paste. There's nothing to set her apart, because true femininity is what once made a woman unforgettable. A feminine woman doesn't compete with every other woman, she stands alone. But now, the majority look, sound, and act the same. And in a world where men already have access to endless options, why would they commit to what feels identical? Femininity is what made women priceless. Without it, they've reduced themselves to common. So yes, good feminine women barely exist anymore. And until women realize the cost of abandoning that essence, they will keep losing men, families, and legacies. Men, on the other hand, are adjusting. They're reclaiming their time, their peace, and their purpose. They're no longer chasing illusions, they're demanding reality. And the reality is this: without femininity, women lose their unique power. Without femininity, relationships lose their meaning. Without femininity, love loses its depth. Men have already accepted it, which is why so many are walking away. The question is, when will women wake up? When will they realize that in rejecting femininity, they rejected the very thing that made them irreplaceable? Until then, good feminine women will remain nearly extinct, and men will continue building their worlds alone,